So, great to be back again. So for all you new people, in case you didn't know, we have the best worship band you'll find. So, it's always a good thing to come here and just kind of focusing on what that is. Is this okay?
Yeah, for now.
You good? Okay. For now. So I'm standing up here because we're adjusting with some sound issues. So normally I like to be down there, but so we're gonna jump in today. I normally try to give a message where when you leave here, you leave with something actionable, something you can take out of this place and use day to day. And today's not going to be much different, but I do want to kind of shift gears a little bit because I think as a body the last year, we really focused on identity and who we are in Christ and who we are as a body here at the collective and individually. We focused a lot on honoring each other and what honor meant and how we walk that out in our lives. But things have changed. There was a shift, and not just here, but in the world in the last couple of weeks. And I think everybody in here has felt it in one way or another. And so I kind of wanted to, Kyle asked me just the other day if I could fill in tonight, and it was like funny because I was already preparing a message for, I'm speaking in March, I was preparing, and God's like, no, it's time to bring it now. And I mean, it's like, well, it's ready, but God's like, we're gonna move with it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about a couple things, but what the general focus tonight is the civics of being a Christian in the modern era. And how many of you have ever taken a civics class in school? So if you look around, you see not a lot of people raise their hand. That's one of the things they've actually taken out of school. There's not a lot of schools that actually teach civics anymore. But civics is how the world works. It's how our government works. It's how we take responsibility for what we do in the world. And as Christians, we're part of that. And so what we want to talk about tonight is a little bit about what that means, especially in the times we're in now. Because I think we're moving out of a phase of finding our identity. And I think we're moving into a phase where God's equipping us to be active and doing things in the kingdom and doing things in the world we live in. And we're in a unique place for that. As Christians, we have the grand guidance of the Father to lead us through some of those things. So the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit about what the world thinks about us in this room when it comes to society. We've all heard the stereotype things, guys, I love the fact that we're weird. We have the weirdest people you'll ever meet in this room. And I promise you, God loves them too. So with that out of the way, I want to kind of clean house a little bit on last year. Right where you are, just go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to focus on just a few things. Who are you? Who are you today? Who has the Father told you you are? What have you been struggling with this year, last year, today? What are the things that when somebody says, what do you do? And they're not talking about your job. Who are you? The world says you're crazy, you're radical, all of those things that we see on the news. But who are you? Now, who does the Father tell you you are? Throughout the Bible, we see him say things like, we're servants. We're his voice. We're his hands. We're his feet. There's one line that we kind of don't talk about a whole lot. And we are the heir of Christ. So each and every one of us in this room is the heir to a king. You are the son of a king. That makes you princes and princesses. And that comes with some authority. So as we come into this new year, that's when somebody says, "Who are you?" That's what you need to turn your focus to. You are a son of the King. Say that to yourself right now. I am the son of the King. I'm a daughter of the King. Say it again. That means something. When we look at Luke 15, Luke 15, it's the parable of the lost son, the prodigal son story. We've all heard that story before, and there's a lot of messages there about who the two brothers were, but there's not a lot of messages about what some of the symbolism and the things that happen in that story are, and I think it's really applicable to where we are in the world today. So I kind of want to talk about that, but before we get into that, I want to kind of talk about some of our responsibilities as Christians, especially Christians that walk in a royal priesthood. We are royal, and that means something. And we've gone way too long letting people walk over who we are in Christ. We've gone way too long as a body, keeping our mouths shut, not saying the things that are important that need to be said, not standing in the face of what God calls evil and calling it evil ourselves. I have no problem and no hesitation declaring from right here that abortion is evil. You can't say that. We say that here, and a lot of churches get in trouble for that. I would go to jail for that. That is a conviction on my heart. And as Christians, what I really want to emphasize tonight, and I'm not going to keep you long, but I really want to lay the foundation here, is that we need to take authority as Christians. And you as young people are in a unique position to impact the entire world, starting right here in your backyard. Because it's small things that make a big change. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is the little things you can do. So some of the things that people say about who you are is that your voice doesn't matter. Okay? Most of the people in this room are in your early 20s. The founding fathers of this nation, when our Constitution were written, were about your age. Most of them are in their early 20s. You have a voice and you have something important to say. So start saying it.
Amen. Yeah.
There are people sitting in City Hall right down the street that don't have God whispering in their ear because they refuse to listen. Wow. You do. And there's nothing keeping any of you in this room from sitting in one of those seats and crying Christ from the mountaintop. The other thing they like to say about you is you don't know a whole lot about what goes on in the world. In some degree, that could be true. But whose fault is that? You have to start being active in the world around you. You have to start understanding that you have to know what's going on. And you can't get that from television. You can't get that from the internet. You have to find new ways to get information and really learn about who and what is going on in the world. Because you're not going to hear it from Donald Trump or Joe Biden or anybody on Fox News or CNN. You're going to get half stories from everywhere. And as the young generation, what God was pushing me tonight to say is that it's time for you to take responsibility for the world you live in and refuse to let people keep you quiet. Politics is important. We don't like to talk about it. It's impolite to talk about it at dinner. Anybody who knows me knows that I don't have a problem with that. But you have to understand it. You have to know what politics means for you because it's affecting your life. Yeah. And I'll tell you the secret to politics. If it sounds really cool and free, it's not. It's not. No. We've had candidates run on things like free education. There's no such thing as free education. You are going to pay for it at some point in your life. So when you look at politics, as a Christian, you have to go, okay, here's the surface thing. Because how does God look at everything? It's definitely not the surface. He looks inside. So you have to look inside. What are the consequences of these things? What is God's heart telling you that if it's too good to be true, it probably isn't, but here's why. Because it's important to understand that just because you know that it sounds too good to be true and it probably isn't, you do need to understand why it isn't. Because you are responsible for telling your friends and neighbors why. It is not a time to be quiet. Because bad things can happen when we're quiet. And we've seen that in the kingdom for 1,000 years, that every time Christians stay quiet, bad things happen in the world. Your voice is important. Understanding the world you're in is important. Understanding the world of politics is important. It's not about debating issues. It's about understanding the Christ-based world values that you should have. And if you don't know what they are in you, you have the blueprint right here. Everything I've ever needed to know about how the government works and how politics works and how to change things is right here. If you're not spending time here, you're not going to accomplish much in this. And it's a fight. We're not talking about battles anymore. We're talking about fights. Because the battle was won. But the fight goes on because we have to clean up the mess that was left behind. And that's what you guys have to take hold of. The last thing that they also like to say about you is that you don't have any new ideas. Now, I talk to a lot of people in this room one-on-one over coffee and lunches, and I can tell you there's no lack of ideas in this room. So if there's something you're thinking about or you thought about that could change the world around you, your community, change something about your school, change something about your neighborhood, do it. Find 2 or 3 people and tell them what your idea is and have them run with you. But start being proactive, because that's where we're heading. 2020 is going to be a year about activation. If you like to sing, you're going to sing louder.
Yes.
If you like to go out and preach, you're going to preach louder, you're going to preach harder, and you're going to preach in places that they don't want you. That's what's coming. This isn't about revelation, because revelation happens when we start doing these things. We're not scheduling revelation. We're not. God told us He's going to make it happen when it's going to happen. It's our job to prepare the field. And that's what the season we're in. We know who we are now. We spent a year talking about identity. We know who we are now. Now it's time to do something with it. And that's what we really need to focus on. So what does citizenship look like for Christians? Going back to politics, I can tell you that in the last election, we had the largest young people turnout in an election in U.S. history. It's not something to clap about. 44% of eligible young Christians showed up to vote in the last election. That means over half the people in this room probably didn't vote. Now, what does that mean? I'll tell you that we've had in this country 6,000 mayorship elections, all won within less than 100 votes. We had 11 senatorial seats at the state level, won within 12 votes. You still don't think you can sway an election? The presidential election came down to a handful of votes in a couple states. And those states also had one of the worst young people turnouts in the country. You have to vote. You have to vote. I don't care who you vote for, but do your homework, make a God-driven decision, and vote.
It's good. Yeah.
You have to vote.
It's good.
If you don't, you're going to be steamrolled by a bunch of people up in Washington who don't care about you and don't care about what Jesus told you last week. And don't let anybody give you the argument that, well, that's Caesar's thing. We give Caesar what's Caesar. I hate to tell you, but you're anybody else. So, what does that mean for you? How many people in here know somebody who isn't saved? Okay. How many people in here who know people who aren't saved invited them here tonight? Those are little things, but they mean a lot. You know, and I'm not saying that we're going to shape the world with one person we bring to it, but if 10 people bring 10 people, if 20 people bring 20 people, now we're the army that can do something. And it starts here locally. There's a lot of need. So the next thing you're going to do to be a good Christian citizen is find how you can serve in your community. Okay? There are volunteer opportunities in every community across this country. And there are people desperate for people to come and help.
Yeah.
If you don't know a place to go and serve, come talk to a pastor, come talk to your school guidance counselors. There are places to find out where you can serve. There are communities right down the road that have 80% of the kids with no fathers at home that need a young man to come and just play ball with them and let them vent. And you can turn their lives around.
Yeah.
I run a nonprofit inner city ministry, and that's exactly what happens. We watch these kids come in, and they're bitter, they're angry, they're hurt. Nobody shared Jesus with them. Nobody showed them what it's like to have a mentor or somebody actually care about what they're doing. And we put them with a coach for a short amount of time and watch their lives turn.
Yeah.
I'd like to share the story of when we did our very first little outreach up in Lake Park. We were in a community up there, and two of the kids came from other sides of the same neighborhood, but there's a very divided neighborhood up there racially, and the kids just did not get along. And these two kids in particular were not. They were there because they were told they had to be there, kind of situation, and they didn't like each other. And they started getting into a fight. A smaller kid ran up to a friend of mine that I started the ministry with and grabbed onto him like an anchor, trying to stay away from this other kid. And this other kid was going to pummel him on the field. But what happened was, all of a sudden, his name is Sud, some of you guys have met him before. He stood there with this kid at his back and this other kid coming at him. And the kid coming at him just stopped. Sud was quite a bit bigger than him, but he stopped. And that kid sat on the sideline of that field the entire day. He didn't say anything the entire day. He didn't play with the rest of the kids. The next week he came back and he sat at the side of that field. And the next day he came back and stayed at the side of that field. Fast forward 2 years, that kid is the one running around the neighborhood asking all the other kids to come play with them. And it took us going over there and talking to this kid and actually being in their lives. Find a place to serve in your community. It makes a big difference. We got to see some of our first kids graduate from high school this year, which was really awesome. In a place where most of the kids never finish high school. You can encourage somebody. You can encourage somebody in this group. But just find those opportunities to serve, because that's part of what we are meant to do as a body, is to serve our neighbors. And it doesn't matter if they know Jesus yet or not. If you show them Jesus, they'll find him.
Amen.
But show them you care first. A big theme of what we do as a ministry with Creator's Game is that you have to show people how much you care before you tell them how much you know. And it really rings true in these neighborhoods. So just find a place to serve, and I promise you, you'll be rewarded for it. God has never turned back anything empty. So anyway, kind of got off track there, sorry.
Nope.
One of the important things about serving is knowing that when God sends you somewhere, it may not be somewhere comfortable.
Yeah.
It's true.
Christians love to say, yes, God, send me. Not too far. Don't send me that neighborhood. They don't want me over there. What I've learned is that the deeper the hole, the quicker God wants you to jump into it. And he's done that with me over and over and over again, sometimes very reluctantly with me standing at the edge grabbing all of it, everything I've got. But every time you follow what God's going to do in your life, he's going to turn it around for you.
That's right.
Every time.
Yeah.
And I mean that every time. If it doesn't look like it worked, trust me. He's never wrong. Every time. So next thing you can do is develop your own individual perspective of the world. One of the big things I've seen over the last few years is that people like to do groupthink. They just join the bandwagon, and you can tell because when they argue their points, they repeat the same lines that everybody else uses. There's some great clips on the internet of the news stations doing that. They all say the exact same thing. God has given you a unique perspective on the world. It's not going to be like mine. Don't subscribe your vision of what the world is around you to somebody else's. Let God define that for you. Because your piece is one piece of a much bigger puzzle, and your interaction with somebody who has the other piece of the puzzle is going to inspire the third piece and the fourth piece. The kingdom is always built in pieces. If you look out throughout the Old Testament especially, you see that God took things in pieces, and eventually those pieces all collided and became Israel. Eventually all those pieces collided and became the church. So you have to be willing to subscribe to your own vision of what the world is around you and let Christ lead you in that, and then be vocal about it. There's a lot of what I'm saying tonight is about being vocal. You really have to start speaking out and opening your mouth. So that's very, very important. So I'm going to say part of this for March, but I want to go into.
Send it.
Yeah, this is. I would rather honor your time tonight and actually spend a little time going into the part of this. But I do want to jump into the parable of the lost son a little bit before we leave tonight, and I want to talk about not who the two brothers are, which is the message for most of us here. You find the brother who was reluctant and the brother who was angry that the father poured all the adoration and honor onto the younger brother. We get messages like that. They're very preachy. I know a lot of people who like to preach from the Bible like to say, oh, there's all these deep hidden meanings and stuff. And sometimes God just says what he's going to say. And it's not, you don't have to dig for it. Because you know what? When I first started reading the Bible, I had gone through seminary. And we didn't read the Bible. We read books about the Bible. So to come in, and now I'm coming in with my book about the Bible, and I'm reading the same passages. I'm like, that's not what this book told me at all, because God revealed something different in it and something important in it. So in the parable of the lost son, I'm going to actually read it, and then I just want to go over a few things with you really quickly. So if you want to turn your Bible, we're going to be in Luke 15, starting at verse 11. Says, Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he'd spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out as a citizen of that country, who sent them into the fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, How many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will sit out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against you in heaven, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put the ring on his fingers and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let us have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is now alive. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. The story goes on, and the older brother was out in the field and heard the celebration coming on and came back. And he was very angry at the fact that there was this celebration. And he had an interaction with his father, and the father says, "My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So there's three things in here that I want to cover with you really quickly. And it has to do with the things that were given to the younger son. We will go into the older brother on another day. But I want to talk about the robe, the sandals, and the ring for just a minute. So, let's hear. The first thing I want to talk about is the sandals. The sandals, in a lot of the biblical studies you read about, they talk about the sandals as a way of elevating his status, because the poor in this time didn't wear sandals; they were barefoot. If you had sandals, you were wealthy. Your feet were tender, and you could walk wherever because you had something on the bottom of your feet. But the sandals in this specific passage represent elevation. It represents standing above. As Christians, we're called to stand above what is around us, not over them, but above. And that doesn't mean we look at the poor and say, "I'm greater than you," because that's not what God has taught us. God has taught us that the person who's least in the room is the most. Yeah. So, as a Christian community, we look at the sandals, and it's a protection. We are standing on protection of Christ. Wow. It has nothing to do with standing over or the stature. It has to do with protection. So that is the symbolism of the sandals. The next is the robe. The robe is the stature of who his father was. The robe was the authority of the father. The robe was a protective covering that told people as he was walking to step aside. So it is the path that we walk as Christians. When we put on the robe, we're walking in representation of the Father. We are walking as Christ. So in a world like we see today, where everything seems to be going wrong, we stand on the authority of Christ, and we walk in his authority. We walk with his voice. Yeah. So that is the symbol of the robe. The most important symbol in that story is the one that's talked about least, and it is the ring. And that's what I want to talk to you about. All the things I talked to you today about is about being bold and speaking out and taking authority and approaching things without question. It's about boldness. That ring on the finger signified that he was his father's son. With that ring, it was a sign of honor and love from his father, but it also meant something else. There's a story that I heard when I was a kid that talks about a prince who wanted to run away from the castle because he tired of living in the castle and having everybody serve on him. So he ran to the town, and he would go in the restaurant, and the restaurateur would put him at the best table. So he ran to the baker, and the baker gave him the best bread. And he ran through the town trying to find somebody who would treat him just like a townsman. And nobody would. So he went home, and he changed his clothes into the clothes of a servant. And he ran back to the restaurant the next day, and the restaurateur put him at the best table. And the baker gave him the best loaf of bread. And it didn't matter where he went, they always treated him like a prince. And so he asked somebody, why do they always do this? And it was a peasant, and they looked down at his hand and says, because you wear your father's ring. They treat you as if you are the father. You wear the father's ring. you speak with authority from the Father.
Right.
When you walk into a room and you speak because the Father is guiding you and you're his voice.
So good.
Yes.
That ring is what makes the prince the prince. It is the authority. And that ring is the voice of the heart of God in you. The ring is grace. The ring is mercy. The ring is salvation. It's all of those things. You speak with the authority of the Father. And we are entering a time in this world where we need the voice of the Father. We need to speak in boldness. We need to not accept anything that the Father would not accept. So if you can stand to your feet. And we're going to go back to what I started with. Who do you think you are? And we know the answer to that now. Because I am the son of a king. And when I speak, the heavens will move. And when I walk, the ground will clear way before me. And it's not about me. It's about the ring. When I see injustice, it's my responsibility to act as Christ would act. When I see hurting, it's my responsibility to bring healing. Because I am the voice of Christ. You are a prince of princes. You are a child of the King. So sing a little louder. Jump a little higher. Climb what you think is impossible to climb. Because we're going to take back ground for the kingdom. And you can be at the front of the line, or you can be coming up from behind. But the good stuff is going to come in the front. And there's plenty of room for all of us. Father God, we love you. We worship you, Father. We thank you that you've honored us with a seat in your kingdom to serve at your right hand. Father, as we enter a new season, a season of boldness, we speak over everyone in this room, including myself, Father, that I won't be quiet anymore. I won't quiet my thoughts and my tongue when I need to say something. I will call what is evil, evil, and what is good, good. And with my heel, I will crush the head of the snake.
Amen. Hallelujah.
When I face the mountain, I will cry in the name Jesus, and it will move. The world is changing. But Jesus is still king. And we are his voice. And we wear his ring. So Father, just speak to each and every one of us. Give us strength to face whatever comes before us. Let our voices echo your heart. Because I am a prince of the Most High God. Worship you, make us world changers. Not in a superficial way, Father, but make us world let the earth begin to shake beneath our feet. Let us reclaim what is yours and has been stolen.
Upon my finger, you put a robe on my back. You threw your arms around me and said, you are my son, my daughter, don't forget. You put a ring upon my finger, you put a robe on my back. You threw your arms around me and said, you are my son, my daughter, don't forget. You put a ring on my finger, you put a robe on my back. You put your arms around me and said, you are my son, my daughter, don't forget. You put a ring on my finger, you put a robe on my back. You threw your arms around me and said, you are my son, my daughter, don't forget. You are my son, my daughter, don't forget. You are my son, my daughter, don't forget. You are my son, my daughter, don't forget.
you all make me a promise tonight? Things are changing in the world, and it's nothing new. But one thing we have control over in this room is who we want to be. So can you promise me tonight that you will spend the next 12 months being bold for Christ? Will you spend the next 12 months getting in the face of what is wrong and making it right? Will you be the voice of Jesus? Will you be the hands and feet of Jesus and not in the cheesy Christian message set, but go out there and get your hands actually dirty? If everyone in this room does that much, we can change a lot. You are a prince, and you are a princess. It's time to start acting like it. It's time to start acting like it. We've spent too much time complacent. When we shout for Jesus, we shout louder. I told you we were all a little weird. Father, we thank you. We just thank you that you're here, you're King, and you're alive.